My next guest is a journalist and contributor for The Washington Post based in Peru. He writes, quote, "The infighting within a political class that's widely seen as criminally venal has alienated ordinary Peruvians to the point where half no longer support democracy, the third lowest level in Latin America." Simeon Tegel joins me now from the Peruvian capital, Lima. Simeon, thank you so much for joining us. In fact, reading sort of the timeline of how this plays out, it gives you a sense of just how much flux there is in government right now. Pedro Castillo in power for 17 months. He was facing a third impeachment vote. To avoid that, he then decides to dissolve Congress, and then, quickly Congress acts. So many questions surrounding this. Do you believe that he did not speak to his loyal supporters to be able to make this decision that eventually ended up him being pushed out of government completely?
I think so. He was really a president under siege, cornered by anti-corruption prosecutors, and heading for this third impeachment vote. And I think he was also quite detached from reality for a number of reasons. One of them is that he does not like the media, he does not like journalists, and therefore famously did not read newspapers. I think the irony is that this third vote to impeach him might well have failed. It requires a two-thirds supermajority here in Peru. The previous two had fallen short of that, and this one might have done as well. But Castillo decided to take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and suddenly gave this unannounced TV address in which he said he was dissolving Congress and would rule by decree. He had zero constitutional authority for any of that. It's been widely described as a coup. I think it's almost impossible to disagree with that characterization. And by doing so, he pretty much sealed his own fate. The Congress brought forward that impeachment vote, and they voted him literally just inside 2 hours of his TV speech. They impeached him, and he was immediately no longer president.
Peru has had 5 presidents in 25 months. The protest action that we've seen that have now turned deadly, is this a vote against Dina Boluarte, would you say, or the fact that they are really supporting Pedro Castillo? Is it about the lesser evil here? Because Peru is facing multiple crises and a very unstable government.
It's a bit of both. And I think also what people want is new elections and for the Congress that impeached Pedro Castillo to go. It's worth bearing in mind that Pedro Castillo was very unpopular. His approval rating for much of the last few months was in the 20s. It had just creeped back up to 30, perhaps, when he was impeached. But Congress is even lower and has been as low as 10% in the last year. It's like Pedro Castillo, it has just staggered from one corruption scandal or ethical scandal to another. And both Pedro Castillo's government and Congress were really ignoring the very real demands of ordinary people in Peru. Peru has had the world's highest COVID-19 mortality. Half the population are now suffering from food insecurity, which is twice the level before the pandemic. And neither the government nor Congress have done anything about that. So the demands right now, I think most Peruvians want new elections. They want this Congress to go. They would like a new president as well, but some of them may be more focused on Congress than on Dina Boluarte, and some of them actually want Pedro Castillo freed and reinstated as president, which I think is one demand that is definitely not going to be met.
It's really interesting hearing about the crises and just the turbulence that is occurring right now on the ground. The question becomes, Dina Boluarte is saying, okay, let's do elections, let's try and get them happening in 2024. In the meantime, you've also got to think about the politicians that would be available, the options for Peruvians to be able to vote another party in, another politician in that would be able to deal with these multiple issues.
Well, that's one of the structural problems of Peruvian politics. There aren't any alternatives really on the horizon. The criticism of the Peruvian political system and party system for a long time has been that it is not representative of ordinary Peruvians. You have basically a corrupt political class where there's about a dozen different parties vying for power, and it should be said vying to control the public coffers. The registration for these parties are controlled by individuals, party bosses, who've put up very high barriers for new parties to register and participate in elections. They also tend to pick candidates personally, typically whether they're left-wing or right-wing. A lot of these candidates are in some ways involved in corruption or have various kinds of criminal or ethical controversies around them. So new elections, unless there are deep political reforms, are probably just going to throw up a similar result, which is both a Congress and potentially a president who, whether they're left-wing or right-wing, is not addressing these really deep, serious problems that are affecting ordinary Peruvians.
Simeon Tegel, thank you very much for joining us.